All right, so we're diving into Atomic Habits by James Clear. Great choice. We're going to try to pull out like the most interesting stuff from the book and hopefully give you some like aha moments along the way. Ready?
Absolutely. What I find fascinating about this book is Clear doesn't just preach from an ivory tower. He weaves his personal story throughout, a story of resilience and transformation after a brutal baseball injury in high school. Imagine this broken nose, facial fractures, the works. It was a long road back.
Yeah, I remember that. It wasn't just like a physical recovery, right? Didn't he have to relearn basic things like walking? Makes this whole Atomic Habits thing a lot more real.
Exactly. And that's where the power of these tiny changes comes in. It wasn't some miracle cure. It was years of dedicated
Yeah.
incremental effort. He used his own atomic habits system to go from barely being able to walk to becoming an academic All-American in college.
Okay, so how does this whole Atomic Habits thing work? Is it just like a fancy term for discipline?
Well, it's more nuanced than that. Think of it like compound interest, but for self-improvement, small. Consistent actions performed over time lead to incredible results. It's not about one giant leap. It's about the long game.
So it's not about finding like some motivation hack. It's about building a system that makes those small actions automatic.
Precisely. And that's where Clear's argument against focusing only on goals comes in. He suggests that we shift our focus from goals to systems.
Hold up. Ditch goals entirely. That feels kind of counterintuitive. Isn't having a goal like the whole point of self-improvement?
Well, here's the thing. Winners and losers often have the same goals. It's the systems they implement that set them apart. Think of it this way. Goals are like the destination. Systems are the vehicle that gets you there.
Okay, I see the distinction. So it's less about like I want to lose 20 pounds
Yeah.
and more about I'm going to create a system where I eat healthy meals and exercise regularly.
That's a great example. It's a subtle shift, but it has profound implications. Goals are often tied to a future state of happiness, whereas systems encourage continuous improvement and finding joy in the present moment.
So instead of waiting to be happy when we reach a certain goal, we find satisfaction in the process itself. Makes sense. But I'm curious, where does the whole identity piece fit into this?
Clear talks a lot about the importance of aligning your habits with your identity.
That's where it gets really interesting. Clear argues that true habit change is actually identity change. Your current behaviors are a reflection of your current identity. If you want to change your habits, you need to shift your underlying beliefs about who you are.
So it's not just about doing the actions, it's about embodying the type of person who does those actions.
Exactly. Remember that voting study he mentions? People who identified as voters were more likely to actually vote than those who just saw it as a one-time action. Their self-image dictated their behavior. So it's not just about willpower or discipline. It's about changing the story we tell ourselves about who we are. That's powerful. But how do we actually put this into practice? I mean, how do you just decide to become a different person?
That's where Clear's 4 laws of behavior change come in. Think of them as a framework for making good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible.
Oh, yeah. The cue craving response reward loop. Didn't he say each law has an inverse for breaking bad habits, too?
He did, and he dives deep into each one, offering tons of practical examples. For instance, when it comes to cues, he talks about this habit scorecard exercise. It's almost like a point-and-call system for raising awareness of the cues that trigger your habits.
You mean like literally pointing and saying,
Yeah.
opening the fridge queue for mindless snacking?
Exactly. It sounds silly, but it forces you to become aware of those unconscious patterns. You're already running on autopilot. And when it comes to cravings, Clear delves into the fascinating role of dopamine. Turns out the anticipation of a reward can be just as addictive as the reward itself.
Wait, so it's not just the cookie that gets us hooked. It's the thought of the cookie. That's wild.
And it's what makes breaking bad habits so hard. That craving kicks in even before we get the thing we think we want. Then there's the response phase. Clear emphasizes making the desired action as frictionless as possible. This is where his famous 2-minute rule comes in.
Right, instead of aiming for a 30-minute workout, you start with just putting on your gym clothes. Instead of writing a whole chapter, you just write one paragraph. Tiny steps, big results, right?
Exactly. And finally, we get to reward, the part that makes those good habits stick. Clear highlights the importance of making good habits satisfying, even enjoyable. Remember that hand-washing study in Pakistan he mentions? They found that simply making hand-washing more enjoyable by providing pleasant-smelling soap led to lasting behavior change. It's incredible how a small tweak can make such a difference.
It's like you're tricking your brain into associating the habit with something positive. But what about those times when we need a bit more than a pleasant smell to stay motivated?
Well, Clear has a strategy for that too. He calls it habit stacking, leveraging existing habits to trigger new ones. Think of it like piggybacking off something you already do consistently.
Okay, I'm listening. How does that work?
Let's say you want to start meditating every morning. Instead of relying on willpower alone, you could stack it onto an existing habit, like brushing your teeth. The formula is simple. After current habit, I will use this new habit.
So it would be after I brush my teeth, I will meditate for 5 minutes. That's smart. It's like building a chain reaction of positive actions.
Exactly. You're tapping into the automaticity of your existing habits. Your brain already knows the routine, so it takes less effort to add on a new behavior.
I'm already thinking about all the habits I could stack together. But are there any guidelines for doing this effectively? I mean, can I just stack any two habits together?
There are a few nuances. Clear emphasizes that the two habits should be logically connected and occur in the same environment. Stacking a habit you do every day onto one that only happens once a week probably wouldn't work.
Right, that makes sense. So something like, after I check my email, I'll do 10 push-ups. Probably wouldn't be as effective as after I make my morning coffee, I'll read for 10 minutes.
Precisely. The cue needs to be specific and consistent. And as you get more comfortable, you can create entire routines by linking multiple habits together. This can be especially helpful for morning or evening routines.
This is making me realize how much our environment shapes our habits. Like if we surround ourselves with cues that trigger the behaviors we want, it seems like it would make staying on track much easier.
You're absolutely right. Clear dedicates a whole chapter to environment design. He argues that we're far more influenced by our surroundings than we realize. He uses that example of how Massachusetts General Hospital redesigned their cafeteria to promote healthier choices.
Wait, remind me about that. What did they do?
They simply rearranged the food displays to make healthier options more prominent. And guess what? It led to a significant increase in sales of those items. Just by tweaking the environment, they nudged people towards better choices.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So if I wanted to eat healthier, I could make fruits and vegetables more visible in my fridge. Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Exactly. And on the flip side, making bad habits less visible can help break those unwanted patterns. Hide the junk food, unsubscribe from those tempting email lists. Delete those addictive apps, you get the idea.
It's all about reducing friction. Right? The easier it is to do the good habit, the more likely we are to actually do it.
Precisely. And if you can't physically change your environment, even small rearrangements can make a difference. Clear tells the story of an entrepreneur who designed his workspace to trigger deep focus.
He talks about putting his phone in a drawer, using noise-canceling headphones, dimming the lights. It's like creating a sanctuary for productivity.
Exactly. It's about being intentional with your surroundings and leveraging environmental cues to support the habits you want to build.
Okay, so we've talked about making good habits obvious and attractive. But what about the flip side? How do we make those bad habits less appealing? Isn't there a way to increase the friction for those unwanted behaviors?
There is. Clear calls this the inversion of the second law of behavior change, making it unattractive. If making good habits easy is key, then making bad habits difficult is the counterpoint.
So it's like playing defense against your own bad habits.
Exactly. Want to watch less TV? Unplug it after each use? Want to spend less time on social media? Log out of your accounts? Trying to curb impulse spending? Leave your credit cards at home.
He also talks about using technology to our advantage, like website blockers or apps that limit screen time. It's like using our own tools against us.
That's a great point. Automation can be incredibly powerful for both building good habits and breaking bad ones.
Then there are those commitment devices he mentions, essentially pre-committing to a certain behavior to make it harder to back out later.
He gives that funny example of the entrepreneur who made a habit contract with his wife and trainer to lose weight.
Yeah, he had to pay his trainer $100 every time he missed a workout. That's one way to stay motivated.
It sounds extreme, but it worked. The idea is to make the cost of inaction greater than the cost of action.
It's like that saying, burn the boats. Once you've committed, there's no going back.
Exactly. And even if you don't go to the lengths of a full-blown contract, simply having an accountability partner can be incredibly helpful. Knowing that someone is watching and expecting you to follow through can be a powerful motivator.
It's like having a built-in support system to keep you on track. Which makes me think about the whole social aspect of habit formation. Didn't Clear talk about how our social circles can influence our habits?
He did. It's the concept of social norms. The idea that we're wired to conform to the habits of the people around us.
He mentioned that we tend to imitate the habits of 3 groups in particular: the close, the many, and the powerful, so our friends and family. The larger groups we identify with. and those we admire or see as authority figures.
Exactly. It's why it can be so much easier to stick with a habit if you're surrounded by people who are already doing it. Think about running clubs, book clubs, online communities. They create a sense of belonging and shared identity that reinforces those positive behaviors.
It's like creating a microculture where the habits you want to build become the norm. And on the flip side, if you're trying to break a bad habit, it makes sense to surround yourself with people who don't engage in that behavior.
Absolutely. It's all about leveraging social influence to your advantage.
This whole conversation is reminding me of something else Clear talks about, the importance of reward. It's not just about making good habits easy and bad habits hard. It's also about making those good habits enjoyable, right?
You're right. That's the fourth and final law of behavior change. Make it satisfying. We're far more likely to repeat a behavior when it feels good. It's about tapping into our brain's reward system.
But so many of the benefits of good habits are delayed. We work hard today, but the payoff might not come for weeks, months, or even years. How do we bridge that gap?
Well, one strategy is to bundle a habit you want to do with a habit you need to do. Clear calls this temptation bundling. It's like a little reward system for yourself.
Okay, I like where this is going. Give me an example.
Let's say you love watching Netflix, but you know you need to exercise more. You could make a rule that you only allow yourself to watch your favorite show while you're on the treadmill.
So you're basically hacking your brain's reward system by linking something you enjoy with something you need to do. That's brilliant.
It's a sneaky way to make those good habits more appealing. And don't forget the power of celebrating small wins. Acknowledging your progress and giving yourself credit for the effort you're putting in can reinforce those positive behaviors.
It's so easy to get caught up in what we haven't accomplished and forget to appreciate how far we've come.
That's why tracking your habits can be so powerful. It provides a visual reminder of your progress and helps you stay motivated.
Clear talks about different tracking methods. Habit tracker apps marking an X on a calendar, keeping a journal. It seems like the key is to find a method that works for you. Something simple and enjoyable.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be complicated. The goal is to make tracking a positive part of the process.
But even with all these strategies, I imagine there are times when we hit a plateau or lose motivation. What happens when we just don't feel like it anymore? How do we push through those moments of resistance and stay committed to our goals?
That's the million-dollar question. And thankfully, Clear offers several techniques for navigating those inevitable slumps. One of the most powerful is the concept of identity-based habits. It's not just about doing the thing, it's about becoming the type of person who does the thing.
So instead of forcing myself to go to the gym, it's more about cultivating the identity of someone who prioritizes fitness.
Exactly. It's a subtle shift in mindset, but it can make a huge difference. When you see yourself as a runner, you're more likely to lace up your shoes and hit the pavement, even when motivation is low. Your identity reinforces the behavior.
I'm starting to see how this connects back to the idea of changing the story we tell ourselves. Like if I believe I'm a healthy person, I'm more likely to make choices that align with that belief.
That's the idea, and it works both ways. As you repeat a habit, it strengthens that aspect of your identity. Each time you go for a run, you reinforce the belief that you are in fact a runner. It's a positive feedback loop.
Okay, that makes sense. But it still feels a bit abstract. How do we actually shift our identity to support the habits we want to build? Do we just look in the mirror and say, I am a runner until we believe it?
It can be as simple as starting with small wins and proving to yourself that you are capable of change. Instead of aiming for a marathon, commit to running for just 5 minutes. Instead of writing a novel, write 1 paragraph a day.
So it's about taking those baby steps and building evidence for our desired identity. Each small win chips away at that old story and reinforces the new one.
Precisely. It's like building a case for yourself one small action at a time. And as you start to see yourself differently, your habits will naturally align with that new self-image.
That's pretty powerful. But let's be honest. Even with a shifted identity, there are going to be times when we feel like giving up. How do we stay on track when motivation inevitably dips?
Clear emphasizes the importance of reflection and celebration. It's easy to get caught up in the daily grind and forget to acknowledge how far we've come.
He's a big fan of habit tracking, right? Using a visual reminder of our progress to stay motivated.
Exactly. Seeing those streaks add up can be incredibly motivating. But it's not just about tracking the positive. It's also about analyzing our setbacks. Understanding why we slipped up can help us adjust our strategies and prevent those mistakes from happening again.
So it's a continuous cycle of action, reflection, and adjustment. It's almost like being a scientist of our own habits.
That's a great way to put it. And I think Clear's ultimate message is that the journey of self-improvement is never truly over. There's always room for growth, for optimization. It's about embracing a mindset of continuous learning and refinement.
So we've covered a lot in this deep dive into atomic habits. We've explored the power of small changes, the importance of systems, and the profound connection between our habits and our identity.
We've also explored practical strategies for making good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible, from habit stacking to environment design to temptation bundling.
It's been a fascinating journey into the science of habit formation. What stands out to you the most?
For me, it's the idea that we are not fixed. We have the power to change, to evolve, to become the architects of our own lives, one small habit at a time.
Well said. And now I want to leave you with this. What small change will you make today to step closer to the person you want to be? Remember, even tiny changes compounded over time can have a remarkable impact. Keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep building those atomic habits.